Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It's football season, and that means it's July. It's not even the end of July, and Luke Jones is now. You got the farmer's tan working out there in Owings Mills yet? It hasn't been like sunny enough to get like all that going, right? Like it hasn't even been like doggy yet, right?
No, it hasn't been too bad. I mean, the first couple days we had some nice sun. You know, got that bronze going based off of what I already had at the beach a few weeks back. But it's been
a Corvette summer for you.
yeah. From a temperature standpoint, it hasn't been too bad. But my goodness, I mean, you talk about Saturday's stadium practice being wiped out because of the rain. They moved inside on Tuesday. It's really been a challenge in that regard. And I mean, they have their indoor field house, so it's not as though they can't put work in, but you have a 90-man roster this time of year. That's a way different animal than your usual 53 and 10 practice squad guys during the regular season. So when they have to go inside, it's a challenge for them to get done everything they want to get done in a perfect world. So it sure beats 95 and humid, I suppose, but it's definitely been a crazy start to training camp, with the early start and certainly with some of the weather we've had.
I know the other day you and I went back and forth on the virtues of Westminster, and we'll always do that. But you haven't been out there a couple of days, the experience of being out there and watching them run around right now. I've only done it sort of halfway. I haven't been out there for a full one this time around. It really does look like it's an exciting thing for the fans to get out there because it's sort of built for it all of a sudden. Once you get in there and you sit down a little bit, it's I don't know, it's like a little mini Vegas theater with football camp. As I see it as a little boutique thing now, you know?
Yeah, I think it's worked pretty well. I mean, I haven't heard too many complaints from people. A couple media members showing up late for practice complained about having to park so far away, but
imagine that. I can fill in the blanks.
No one cares about media complaints, right. But overall, I think it's gone well. I mean, they've certainly expanded it, as you know. I mean, they had a 2.5 year construction project that they've completed, plenty of parking now where they can accommodate, they say, up to 2,000 people, which they haven't had 2,000 people at the early practices to this early stage in summer, but they've had plenty of people out there, and it's been a good experience. They're never going to replicate Westminster. I mean, it's just there was such an authenticity to that. Certainly, they could accommodate more people, even if you can certainly recall some of the backups heading to McDaniel College, on a really busy day. But that acknowledgement aside, it's much better than recent years where maybe they could accommodate a few hundred people, maybe up to 500. I don't know the exact number, but it's better to have that atmosphere. And just the other day, I mean, I took a picture. I posted it on our Twitter at WNST. I posted it on my Instagram. Seeing Lamar Jackson sign the jersey of couldn't have been much more than a 7 or 8 year old boy, and just seeing the smile on his face, it brought back memories to going out to Westminster with my dad when I wasn't overly young. I was 13 when the Ravens moved to Baltimore, but brought back memories of that.
And Lamar's a great kid. I should probably interject that, right? Like, Lamar's good about all this, right? Like, Lamar likes this. This is fun for him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Ravens have a lot of players like that. I mean, Joe Flacco signs plenty of autographs, too. But just that image right there, just to see that kid have that moment with Lamar Jackson, who most likely is going to be the Ravens' franchise quarterback at some point in the next couple of years. The Ravens hope that, certainly. But just to see that moment, that glee on his face, it reminds you of the value to having fans being able to have access to training camp. I mean, there's just, and we've talked about this, I mean, with the Ravens, they had such a magic touch for such a long time in this community, and they've had some missteps, certainly. Some of it self-inflicted, some circumstances out of their control, but a great move to see them be able to accommodate more fans this summer. And I know they even released some more parking passes a little bit earlier in the week that are going to allow even more fans to come. I think it was kind of a soft opening the first 3 or 4 days just to see how the logistics worked out, and clearly they felt prompted that they could release a few more passes for the remaining dates that people can come out and watch practice, and that's a great thing. Makes for a better atmosphere for the players, too. I know more than one player has commented over the last few years when they haven't had fans at training camp that the monotony of it, and you really get into that dog day mode so much more than compared to when you have fans there cheering, jeering maybe, whatever it might be. It just lends to a little more of a competitive environment.
Well, and I think the other part of it is it sort of would have reminded you of the day the Orioles had the tank circle in the building and no one was in the ballpark. It is that silent, right? Like, the difference between absolute quiet and fans is, it's from 0 to 10, literally, right, from an atmosphere standpoint.
It can definitely be jarring. The one thing I'll say from a reporting standpoint, the silence does allow you to pick up on more of what players and coaches are saying, which you still get some of that, but when you have the ambience of the fan noise, it makes for a little bit more difficulty trying to pick up on that stuff. So from a reporting standpoint, maybe a drawback, but it just makes for a better atmosphere, and even for us reporters out there. And look, I love what I do, but you get into day 12 or day 13 of training camp, your eyes glaze over a little bit when you're into that individual.
Well, when there's 45 more to go.
Yeah. So to have the fans there, to see the reaction, to see Terrell Suggs interact with fans, even when he's in year 16 now, it's fun. And it's a better environment when you have fans there at training camp.
No doubt about that. And we'll have plenty to talk about here, but I guess individually, you've now seen more than a handful of practices out there, inside, outside. Any observation here you want to give on a player or two or three that has sort of flashed or shown something that's made you notice what's going on? And I don't even mean on the fringe of the roster. I mean guys that are actually going to be playing against the Bills, not the beer league of who's going to be the fourth, the eighth wide receiver to make the taxi squad, right?
Right. And we talked about this before. I think Joe Flacco's looked really good. I think he's moving much better than he has in a few years. How much of that is being over the back injury? How much of that is being another year removed from knee surgery? I think those are very real variables. So many people are going to point to, he's feeling more urgency with Lamar Jackson there. And look, there's some human nature to that. So anyone who wants to dismiss that part of it, I think you're kidding yourself. But all of those variables combined, you are seeing Joe Flacco who has looked better this time of year than he has. Last year at this time, we were talking about him missing the first couple weeks of training camp, and it ended up being the entire preseason. So right off the bat, he's ahead of the game there. But he's looked good, and I'll give you a couple guys on the defensive side of the ball that have really stood out to me. Willie Henry, who not necessarily seeing him make plays as much because they've only worn full pads for a day or two to this point, but his body, he is in better shape. He has less of a belly. He looks more. Last year, he looked more like the traditional defensive lineman. Now, he looks a little bit more like, if you remember, what Timmy Jernigan's build was like. A guy that, kind of from behind looked, I don't want to say slim, but didn't really look like your traditional Tony Siragusa kind of body. Willie Henry has a little bit of a belly on him, but other than that, he looks fit. He's moving well, and I'll say this much. He looks like he's going to be on the starting defensive line. It looks like they've kind of shifted Brandon Williams back to nose tackle, and Willie Henry's going to get a shot at being the starting three technique, with Michael Pierce still being a big factor, but shifting into a rotational role. So he has stood out to me just how he looks. And the other guy that stood out to me that isn't necessarily going to make a dramatic impact as a starter, but I think Tyus Bowser has had a really good spring, and he's carried that into the start of summer. Looks good dropping in the pass coverage. I think looks more confident, more comfortable in his own skin, and I don't expect him to start because you have Suggs at the rush linebacker spot. You have Judon at the Sam, but they need Bowser, and they'd love Tim Williams to be in on that conversation as well, but they need him to emerge.
Somebody's got to get the quarterback, and it can't be Suggs getting 18 sacks, right?
Yeah, you can't expect Terrell Suggs to keep doing it all or keep carrying the same burden that he has the last few years. And that's not a knock on Suggs. We've sung his praises the last couple of years, how good he still is being in his mid-30s. But you drafted Tyus Bowser in the second round for a reason, and I've seen encouraging signs from him at this early stage. And sure, you want to see how these guys do in the preseason. Need to see it when the games kick off for real. But he stood out to me. Beyond that, just on a more global observation standpoint, you knock on wood, you cross your fingers, cross your toes, everything. They've avoided major injuries early in camp, and I think part of that is a real testament to John Harbaugh, who has kind of had players on this staggered schedule. Joe Flacco, again, on Tuesday, only practiced for about an hour, and he's one of a number of veterans who have been dismissed from the field early. Guys practice, they go through individuals, they go through some group work, but then a lot of these guys, when they get to 11-on-11 team, they're sending them inside, and I think John Harbaugh is just doing that as much as he can with a longer preseason to kind of just more gradually acclimate these guys into football season. So I think you'll see it amp up, and certainly so many teams have now reported for training camp, even though the Ravens are now a week into this thing. But that's been really encouraging to see them avoid those injuries over the first few days of camp. Now, they're going to have some injuries. We know that. It's just the nature of the beast. It might be the next time you and I have a conversation, they've lost a player or two. But to this point, it's been minor things. They're still waiting for Marshall Yanda to come off the PUP list. But overall, it's been very positive from a health standpoint. And Hayden Hurst back on the field after missing a few days with what John Harbaugh calls that soft tissue injury, which is usually a hamstring. But overall, very positive on the health front. And like I said, there's some of those young players flashing, certainly encouraging to see that, as well as the veteran quarterback who, amid criticism and speculation and national pundits clamoring for Lamar Jackson, Joe Flacco's had a really good spring and a really good start to training camp.
Luke Jones is joining us here. We're talking all things Ravens. Of course, on the backside of the Zach Britton trade, you can read my Dear Orioles series up at WNST.net. Luke has been working back and forth from Camden Yards up to Owings Mills. We will be out to Canton, Ohio next weekend. We still have some space left on our road trip. Ray Lewis, of course, going in the Hall of Fame. That's only going to happen once. Got a big fireworks night in Cleveland. We're doing the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We're going to the Pirates game on Sunday. Any mix and match of the above in the weekend, including the Bears and Ravens game, where we're expecting Lamar Jackson to make his debut as well. All at WNST.net under the Road Trips tab. I have limited seats on various buses. Throw me an email. We will make room for you, still at the same great price. Nasty at WNST.net. All of our WNST programming brought to you by our friends at Al's Seafood down in Essex. Chad's down there, shucking the oysters, steaming the shrimp, making the crabs and a crab cake special. They've been doing it down there in Essex since the 1970s. You can visit them at Stemmer's Run at 702 and Eastern when you are in Essex. Al's Seafood in Essex, my mom's favorite crab cakes, and she liked it. We brought the steamed shrimp home with the onions and the beer. You got to do that with the Old Bay as well. Al's Seafood in Essex. Luke, for I guess for anybody expecting or going out to this game next Thursday, and, I had Mike Tanier on. I've talked to Howard Baldinger, a bunch of people this week. I've had a bunch of Ravens alums on, from Gary Baxter, and, I've chased down Brandon Stokely this week. We're going to find more Ravens legends around here over the next week, looking at Ray Lewis. But this game next Thursday night, what's the expectation for this? And I'll probably ask you this 2 or 3 times, but I guess RG3 is going to run around, and the fourth quarterback who no one knows, right?
Well, yeah, Josh Woodrum, who was kind of a preseason all-star last year, and a lot of that was a reflection of how bad Ryan Mallett was. But I think based on and I even looked at the game book from last year's Hall of Fame game, and I think the Cowboys were in it, I can't even remember. But I know both teams held out somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 veterans. So you kind of do the math there. I would think on the offensive side of the ball, you're not going to see Joe Flacco. You're not going to see Alex Collins. You're not going to see Crabtree, Snead, or John Brown. You're certainly not. I wouldn't think you'll see Ronnie Stanley. You'll see young starters still trying to prove themselves. You'll see guys that are battling for starting jobs, obviously, and I think you're going to see veteran starters held out, of course. And I think you'll even see key veteran backups, like, say, an Albert McClellan-type guy. Those types of guys I think you're going to see held out. This is not, the Hall of Fame game is not a game you're attending expecting to see starters, but I think you're going to see plenty of Lamar Jackson. I think you're going to see plenty of Robert Griffin III. Yes, you'll see some Josh Woodrum as well, but it's a great opportunity to see some of these rookie draft picks. And even some second-year guys. I think this will be a great opportunity to see if someone like Tyus Bowser, who I was just talking about, see him in, I don't want to say a starting role because it's not, the Bears aren't going to be playing most of their starters either. So,
but in these games, you highlight 5 guys and say, I'm going to watch these 5 guys and watch them run around.
Well, and we talk about this in the preseason all the time. Relative to if you're not out there if you're not a starter and you're not out there against the opposition starters. So let's say from the second quarter on in the traditional first preseason game, you want to see guys stand out. For example, if it's a guy playing, if it's a guy that you view as a backup and he's playing other backups, you want to see him stand out because what does that mean? That means at the very least he's a good backup. Or you get to the second half where you're talking about back end of the roster guys who have no prayer at making the 53-man roster, guys that are going to be bagging groceries in a few weeks. You want to see which of those guys excel because maybe that's the guy that stands out and makes the team as a rookie free agent. So we're not going to see many starters whatsoever. We're going to see lots of young guys, maybe a few really young starters, and you're just going to see them go through a game that's probably not going to have quite the same tempo that you're going to see even later in the preseason because it is earlier in the summer. But I think for the Ravens especially, there's so much intrigue just to watch Lamar Jackson. And that has nothing to do with Joe Flacco or a competition per se, but just to see what he looks like in a live game setting. I've seen him practice a lot now. I've seen some good. I've seen some bad. He's a rookie. He's got a ways to go. You see the talent, and you also see some of the weaknesses that led to him not being a top 10 pick.
Everything is about decision-making at that point, and that's a lot of decision-making to make and a lot of responsibility to give, and, that's part of that offense. It's inherently built into we're going to make Lamar Jackson our quarterback at some point, right?
Sure. And, just to see that decision-making, to see the Ravens, and I don't know how much of this they'll do because, preseason there's no game planning. It's about as bland as it gets, but the Ravens have worked on RPOs a whole lot more, those run-pass options that have been the craze in college football for, for such a long time, and you're seeing that become more and more the norm around the NFL, whether you have a really mobile quarterback like a Deshaun Watson or you have a quarterback who isn't necessarily a run-first guy, but just someone who can move around well enough to sell those run fakes. So it's going to be interesting to see what Jackson, what this offense, just from a theoretical standpoint, what it looks like next Thursday. Again, I don't expect anything flashy, but I think you're going to see Lamar Jackson play a lot. You're going to see him probably take off a lot because I don't expect him in his first live game action to be fully comfortable. There's going to be some growing pains, but I'll say this much. Jackson being on this team, regardless of how you felt about the draft pick or not, makes the Hall of Fame game a hell of a lot more interesting than it would have been if Ryan Mallett was still their backup quarterback. I think that much is certain.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke out on Twitter and Luke at WNST.net as we prepare for Ray Lewis and Canton. And you and I will do a Ray Lewis segment later on. But I must say what a thrill it's been to go back and talk to all these people that I've considered friends now over 2 decades and try to weigh this Ray Lewis thing out. Next weekend's going to be, kind of a heavy weekend for the franchise in a lot of ways too, with Harbaugh's ties to Ray Lewis and Terrell Suggs and Joe Flacco. And I know I've talked to a lot of the former teammates. Brian Billick is going to be out there broadcasting. He's going to be joining us next week as well, and saying hello to our group as we take our group out there. It's going to be a little purple thing all next weekend that I think is going to kick off all of this stuff for a lot of people for this season and where the Ravens stand and the knee last year and expectations this year. I'm sensing a buzz about the Ravens this year, right on from, I hate my digital tickets for what that's worth, to Facebook posts with people out in the rain and Lamar Jackson, to the demise of the Orioles, that, I sense that August is going to be a little more active than sleepy for the Ravens universe. And the Ray Lewis thing's going to be a wide-awake thing next week, I think, for anybody who's a Ravens fan, right? I mean, if you can't be a Ravens fan and not be tied to Ray Lewis.
There's no question about it. And I think it's going to be a reminder for this city, for this fan base, for this organization, quite frankly, of what has made the Ravens so special. Ray Lewis is the Baltimore Ravens. And I don't say that with disrespect intended to Ozzie Newsome or John Harbaugh or Brian Billick or Ed Reed or Terrell Suggs or Jonathan Ogden, but Ray Lewis has been the face of this franchise from really day one, from the time that he picked off Billy Joe Hobart in the end zone in the Ravens' first ever game against Oakland back in 1996. And, I mean, he's the face of this franchise. He still is the Baltimore Ravens. He still defines what it means to be a Raven. And I know, I mean, look, Ray, in his post-playing career, is it over the top? Is it parody-like at times? Sure. I'm not going to argue with that. But I think next weekend in Canton is going to be a reminder for so many Ravens fans of why you love this team, why this team has been such a integral part of this community for 2+ decades, and to have that celebration on the heels of what's going on with the Orioles right now, not even piling on, just how difficult it's been, how tough it is to see Manny Machado leave, how tough it is to see Zach Britton leave, how tough it is to just be the worst team in baseball from a record standpoint. It's going to be a reminder of sports being fun in this city again, and I think there absolutely is some mojo that I think already exists for the Ravens. I think there's a little more cautious optimism this year than the last couple of years, in my humble estimation. I think the Ravens are going to be able to take away some mojo from this. Not that it's going to guarantee that they're back in the playoffs or anything like that, but I think it can, kind of rekindle and spark that love affair again between the fan base in this city, or the fan base and this football team, and it's going to be all about number 52 and celebrating what a remarkable, remarkable career he had, and just remembering how much fun it was to watch him for 17 years.
Is there a part of you that's dreading the trip next weekend or looking forward to it in sort of a work fashion? I mean, it could be 104 degrees. We're taking 4 busloads of people out there. We still have some space on all of our trips. I got a handful of seats on Thursday, a little bit more on Friday, and even more than that on Saturday if you just want to go out for the day. All of that's up under the Road Trips tab. I have a feeling, Luke, for me it's going to be long, it's going to be all that, but there's going to come that point where Ray Lewis is going to do whatever he does in whatever 18 to 48 minutes it's going to take him to get through whatever he gets through, that is going to feel really, really worthwhile, for me, on a personal level, for having had him out at the barn after that Raiders game in week 1, the book, the Atlanta stuff. I had a lot of personal relationship with Ray Lewis early on, not so much the last 15 years, quite frankly, but, everything good that's happened in my life, my radio station, this city, Super Bowl trips, losing AFC championship trips, girls I met, people I know, businesses I've done, like all of this stuff that's all tied to my life and the Ravens over 22 years, and I think it all kind of flushes out when Ray Lewis goes in all. If you don't feel it then, what are you waiting for? The next parade that might never happen? I don't know. I mean, and the Orioles have none of these that they can point to moving forward at all, unless you consider Messina going in the Hall of Fame for 5 minutes, something that you would look at. You never know around what next corner the next championship or whatever. And Ed Reed's going to go in the Hall of Fame. But this is the cherry on top of everything that was 2 parades. And if you're not drinking this in, I think it's going to be pretty special next weekend. I really do. I think it's the one thing we can look at and say on the calendar, what's the only cool thing that's going to happen that we know of for sports in this city moving forward? I can't tell you the next thing that's going to happen. I think if we got an Olympic game here in 26, the Pope comes back, I don't know. You tell me the next major thing that's going to happen. This is it.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Ed Reed, I assume, will be next year. And look, I hope there's a lot of buzz for that, too, because Ed Reed is someone that I had so much respect for and was such a great player in his own right. But number 52 is different. And, I just think about play on the field, the speeches, ones that were inspiring and ones that were nonsensical, quite frankly.
Well, it did become a caricature, like everything does,
but, And I'm not even saying that to be a knock. Like, the whole package, there's still something so special about that. The pregame dance, my goodness, just to pull the curtain back a little bit on me growing up rooting for the Ravens. My sister got married last year, and she and my now brother-in-law, that we did entrances for the wedding party. They asked me to do the Ray Lewis dance, and I did it.
You should reshare that next week so we can all laugh at it.
But
don't hide that. Don't erase that like the question of Putin. Okay, that's got to be on the transcripts. Okay, we don't take that out.
But my example right there, how many people listening right now are saying, "Oh, I did the Ray Lewis dance," or one of my buddies always did it. And, it's just all those different things. I think Ray Lewis back in 1996, raising the roof, and it's just you're absolutely right. You can talk all you want about the last 5 years since the Super Bowl, and they've only made the playoffs once, and there's been too much mediocrity. And look, there's validity to those comments, and there's validity to concerns and frustration, but
that bar was set by Ray Lewis.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can't embrace that, and by the way, to the point where you suggested how long, whatever the over-under is, I'm taking the over by a lot as far as how long he's going to speak. There's a reason why he's going last among the
What is the over-under? What do you think it is? Hold on, I'm going to Google. Longest a Hall of Fame speech, right? I'll Google that. NFL, I'll just put NFL in.
I don't know if he'll be the longest ever, but he's going to be up there.
Brett Favre, Michael Strahan was long, and Brett Favre, 2016. Hold on, let's see here. 36 minutes is the that's it. 36 minutes.
I would be intrigued to, and the over/under wouldn't be that, but man, if anyone's going to eclipse that, I feel like Ray Lewis would be the one to do it.
That might be the prologue.
right, exactly. There's going to be they'll actually make an announcement that he's going to come back Sunday. And
all right, now y'all go pee. I got to pee. Everybody meet me back here in 5 minutes. I'll get back after this.
But
Rex Ryan might get up and say, let's go have a snack.
yeah. But it's going to be a fun weekend. Ravens in the Hall of Fame game. People on our trip, we're heading to Cleveland Friday night to see the Indians, and induction Saturday, and hearing all the speeches, and then Sunday, checking out PNC Park in Pittsburgh. That'll be fun too on the way home. It's going to be a great weekend. And again, anyone who's cared about the Baltimore Ravens, anyone who's lived and died with this team, whether you feel more connected with them now, less connected with them now, whatever. If you can't celebrate and get excited about Ray Lewis, then I don't really know what to tell you at that point. It's about the journey, and you can point to the 2 Super Bowls, and you can point to the highlights and the lowlights that are there, and you can't deny that with Ray Lewis with Atlanta and that history, certainly.
Is the over/under on me crying 1 or 0 or 3? Seriously, I don't know. What's the over/under on your mother getting emotional, or you getting emotional, or... I don't know. I'm really wondering if it's going to be one. It has potential to be one of those kind of nights, and you don't have a lot of those nights. You've already referenced your sister's wedding only because you and your brother haven't had one, right? So when you start to talk about what he's going to talk about and what it's going to trigger in wherever you were. And I know where I was when he picked off Eddie George, right?
Yeah.
I know where I was when he hit Sproles. I was on the field watching it in the tunnel in San Diego. I don't. All of that's going to point out where I was in my life, where you were in your life, and this. It's got some over-the-top potential, and I think that's why people want to go to Canton, Ohio next weekend, and why people are getting on buses, and why people are going to wind up calling me next Wednesday and saying, please make room for me. I've thought it through. I think I need to be there.
Yeah, and I think with all of those things, it's not even about Ray Lewis as much. It's not even about the Ravens themselves as much. It's about the people that you experience.
I agree 100%. I think that's why it's that.
I don't think I'm going to get emotional just hearing Ray Lewis talk about his accomplishments, which they deserve to be celebrated. He's one of the greatest players in the history of the NFL. But I'll think back to the closing moments of Super Bowl 35, hugging my dad, or watching games with my grandparents who are no longer with us. Those are the things that you really think about, and those are the things that resonate. And that's why I say this to you all the time. If we're so caught up in the pass-fail nature of pro sports, where you're only going to be happy with a win, and you're only going to be happy when your team's holding the trophy.
And you're going to be absolutely miserable when you lose.
Right. I think back to the disappointing losses. I think back to moments in my life, different things going on.
Oh, man, that night we lost to Peyton Manning in 2006. I had Stokely on the other day. I wanted to kick him in the nuts just for thinking about it. That was a dark evening for me. My wife has video of me blubber. I literally blubbered. That's how much it upset me. I don't know that I could care that much about sports ever again. I literally, and I don't know if you know this or not, but I went to dinner with the Stanley Cup a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Really, for real. I've had some moments, but those dark moments, that's built into it. That's part of watching Ray Lewis cry in the training room that night. You know what I mean? Literally, right? How important it was to him, and he had already won once, because it was that important, and that it never happened for Todd Heap, right? That, there were people in the middle of it that it never happened for.
Right. And that's why it's important to, not to sound too hokey, but you kind of, realize you need to realize that the good old days are sometimes right now, and I think that's something with Ray Lewis that a lot of people did acknowledge every time he came out of the tunnel and every time he blew up a ball carrier for a 3-yard loss. I think people realized very quickly how special he was, and that's why every time the Ravens defense was introduced, it was a celebration. It was a party. Who knows what was going to happen in the game? Who knows what was going to happen the 3 hours after that? But when Ray came out of the tunnel, you knew you were watching something special as it was happening, and to be able to relive that a little bit next weekend, that's going to be a hell of a lot of fun.
I hope we hear Who Let the Dogs Out a couple times, just for old times.
I'm sure someone will be uttering that, and I'm sure we will hear Hot in Here by Nelly quite a few times.
I prefer the Train by the Quad City DJs, but, there was a song for every season. That song has some memories of 4 and 12 as well. I called Mike Frederick. By the way, if you have not heard my segment with Mike Frederick, go listen to it. It just was one of the best things I've done on the radio, and it wasn't me, it was him, because he was so poignant in what he had to say about it. So please go check that out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. Hey, man, cool out. We got a week out on the Ray Lewis stuff. I'm sure the Orioles will deal somebody before next week, right? Or at least rumored to be dealing somebody. So we're pretty busy around here. You can find Luke in the buyatoyota.com audio vault for our conversations on the backside of Zach Britton. You can find my dear Orioles letters up at WNST.net as well. You can book the trip to Ray Lewis and Canton and the Indians game and the Pirates game and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We're doing all that next weekend up on the website. And by all means, you can go to Royal Farms and get yourself some coffee, some Western fries, and some tasty fried chicken, as I did in the middle of the night down on Nursery Road outside of BWI. Make sure you're using the ROFO Rewards card. Download the app. Make sure you're using that when you're pumping your gas. There's a Royal Farms right around the corner from you. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. Don't forget the Baltimore Brigade playing in the Arena Bowl at the aforementioned Royal Farms Arena on Saturday night. All the information up at BaltimoreBrigade.com. We also have some segments up in the buyatoyota.com audio vault as well, promoting the game for this weekend. So lots of stuff happening around here, and I am a very available individual on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. The morning newspaper delivers to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m., all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, guaranteed. And the Maryland Jockey Club and our friends at Laurel with the entries in our morning newspaper on the front each and every day, as well as on the front of WNST.net. They are racing in beautiful air-conditioned sports car, sports club and sports car club and a bar. It's a club, bar, restaurant, place. They have crab cakes too, and they're tasty. Get on down to Laurel and enjoy that this weekend as they are racing and getting ready for the Maryland Million. And we have another Triple Crown winner, too. I always like to point that out for anybody that loves horse racing. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.